Bon après-midi, good afternoon. My name is Stefan Berensky. I'm the chief editor of the magazine Spatial, and I am with Josef Aschbacher, the Director General of ESA, the European Space Agency. It's been, well, it's quite a yearly rendezvous we have, discussing about the future, what lies ahead for ESA every year at the Paris Air Forum. And well, this year your plate is quite full. You have so many things coming up, or just having done, like, well, you have Ariane 6, we have new missions like EarthCare, which was launched beautifully. We have the next generation of Galileo, the current generation of Galileo. We have Iris Square. We have a new generation of astronauts, perspectives for human space transportation in Europe to low Earth orbit and maybe beyond. And we have the decisions that have been taken last year in Seville and the preparation of the next ministerial next year. So you are really a busy person. But let's start with the obvious and the imminent, the launch of Ariane 6. What is at stake for ESA, for you?
First of all, so thank you, Stefan. Indeed, there's a lot happening right now. We have a lot of deliveries. We deliver, and you mentioned quite a few milestones. We had also the Space Council just a couple of weeks ago on the 23rd of May, with also a political debate on the competitiveness of Europe and what does Europe need to do and how Europe needs to position itself in a global context that is extremely challenging, and I assume we have been discussing this earlier today already, what happens in the US, Starship, Starlink, SpaceX obviously with Falcon 9, and what all this means for Europe and how Europe needs to respond, to organize itself, to have a good European answer to all the things that are going on. But coming back to ESA, yes, it was pretty busy. We had the astronaut selection recently, the first or the next astronauts are flying on the space station. We had the graduation of the 5 career astronauts. We had launches, EarthCare you mentioned. We had Galileo. We have Copernicus launches coming up, 2 of them. We have Hera coming up as well. So, and Ariane 6 and Vega C, not to forget, Vega C also has its plan to return to flight by the end of the year. And again, there we had a very important firing test at the end of May. And the test was very successful and brings us, I would say, firmly back to with Vega C on the launch pad. But Ariane 6, it is crucial for Europe. It is absolutely mandatory for Europe to have independent access to space. So from that point of view, we have been waiting for it now. We had a small gap between Ariane 5 and Ariane 6 of almost exactly 1 year. But it means not only having our own rocket, but really having our autonomy again, our independent access to space, and therefore the future, the guaranteed future that Europe's space activities at large can be sustained and can be guaranteed with Ariane 6 on one side, with Vega C on the other side, and new launches that are coming on the launch pad, the micro launchers, which we are supporting through a challenge which has yet to be identified and initiated. But again, this was an important decision of Sevilla. Sevilla was indeed a milestone, or paradigm shift, as some people would call it, because we have really achieved quite a lot. On the launcher sector, certainly the guaranteed access to space, the stabilized guaranteed access to space with the public support for Ariane 6 through the amounts that have been published for the flights FM16 to FM42. Meaning that we do have a stable exploitation of Ariane 6, and on the same time, as mentioned, we have decided this paradigm shift of the new launcher challenge. Ariane 6 will be a fantastic launcher. It will be modernized or modern launcher. Of course, it will continue the good legacy of Ariane 5, which has served us for many years, decades, in providing our guaranteed access to space. But it has also this new feature of the upper stage being reignitable and therefore much more versatile, and allowing us to put satellites into different orbits or release them in different orbits, which of course is of interest to customers of constellations, and really provides this ability. I have to say, and this is really something I would like to really underline, to get Ariane 6 to the launch pad for the 9th of July inaugural flight has been a big effort. When I became DG 3 years ago, I did an assessment. I asked my Inspector General, with the help of some external experts, some of them actually in the room, to look at the situation, and the news I got was not a good one, with technical issues, schedule issues, also the governance needed some clarification. It was really quite challenging, and with the help of Ariane Group, of CNES, of Arianespace, and obviously the ESA teams, we have stabilized the technical problems, we have stabilized the schedule, and this allowed us now to go to to make the announcement for the inaugural flight. We have, as you remember, in November last year already indicated a 1.5 months period within which we plan to launch Ariane 6 for the first time, which was mid-June to end of July. Some weeks ago, I've announced, I've reduced this 1.5 months to 2 weeks, the first 2 weeks of July, and I was very happy to make the announcement last week at ELA, at the Berlin Air Show, to target for the 9th of July. But if I made the announcement, of course, ESA is the customer and we're the system architect, but I really want to underline it. I've done this on behalf of all the partners involved. That means Ariane Group has done a really good job to get to the stage where we are. Together with CNES has done a really good job as well. CNES on the Kourou, on the launch base side, of course Ariane Group on the launcher side, and also Arianespace, obviously, who is marketing the launchers to customers, and obviously my own team at ESA, who has been extremely dedicated and extremely good to get us to this stage. Tony is sitting in the room here. Thank you to him and his team, but also other colleagues within ESA to really get us there. So yes, 9th of July, very important day. I know it's 2 days after the elections, or the second round of the elections here in France. So I fear we don't have too many politicians coming to Kourou, which is a pity. But still, this will be a very important event for Europe and of course also for France.
Well, regarding the 7th of July, I suggest some weather issues to postpone for a few days to have a better news coverage. Well, sovereignty is at stake, but recently sovereignty missions like Galileo or EarthCare, which is because dealing with our climate policy is sovereignty, were launched by SpaceX, and it went fine. So if I make myself the devil's advocate, what is the problem with launching with, well, the current monopoly in space? Well, some people say it's the elephant in the room, or the elephant loose in the China shop. Is there any? How do you defend the fact that we invest in our own China in this?
Yeah. Of course, it is crystal clear that we need our independent access to space, but we had the unfortunate situation that for about a year we did not have our own launcher. Then on top, in addition, Soyuz fell away as a launch vehicle after the start of the war in Ukraine by Russia. So that means, actually, plus we had the accident of Vega C. So we had really, I would say, everything that could go wrong within a short period of time went really wrong on the launcher side. Vega C having the accident, Soyuz dropping out, and Ariane 5, let's say, not having an overlap between Ariane 5 and Ariane 6. So we had a gap of 1 year, but certainly we have satellites that need to be launched. You have mentioned some of them. And yes, the launch worked well. I mean, Falcon 9 delivered them in the right orbit and everything was going smooth and well. And it's a very very operational service. And I think this is something that we have to be grateful for the launch of these satellites. But I also would like to underline that this is a temporary solution. This is a temporary solution which we need to take to launch the satellites. But once Ariane 6 and Vega C are back on the launch pad, we will have our own vehicles to do so. And I'm really looking forward also to the newcomers. That means the micro launchers today. We hear that some of them might come after the summer or the second half of this year. I really look forward to them also being successful. There, ESA has a very little role, or almost no role to play. We accompany, of course, a little bit the development. The Launcher Challenge hopefully will be an anchor for them to build up their capability and also grow in terms of weight they can launch. But I'm very happy to see what happens there, that Europe's entrepreneurs are very entrepreneurial and they really are investing out of their own means and their own technical skills and capability to create new launchers which will come on the launcher market. So yes, last year, at the Director General's annual press conference in January last year, I pronounced a launcher crisis. I said, look, Europe will enter into a launcher crisis, especially after the end of Ariane 5. And I was really doing it very much on purpose to make people realize how critical it is and how important launchers are. But this year, 2024, I can say we are really getting out of the launcher crisis. We have actually so many launcher opportunities as we have never had before with Ariane 6, with Vega C and the new micro launchers. This is quite something. And yes, 2024 will be the year of launchers for Europe.
Well, did you schedule all this? Obviously not. When you came into this position, your agenda for 2025, is this going the way you expected? And you came with this new EU ESA governance on space activities. Is it working well?
Well, is it working well? Things can always go better. This is like in every relationship you have. But overall, I have to say the EU-ESA relationship is solid, and we are working on quite a number of programs together. Let me take Copernicus and Galileo. These are today's leading programs in terms of quality and output they deliver. They are world-leading programs for navigation, delivering the most accurate positioning signal in the world. In Copernicus, we get the largest volumes of data from our planet Earth, observing our planet with different satellites of the atmosphere, the oceans, the land surface, the polar regions, creating 35 terabytes of data every single day, and about 350 terabytes, so 10 times as much, being disseminated to the world, which is really good, which is really fantastic. There, Europe has shown, if they work together, they can do incredible things. And this is exactly what the EU-ESA relationship is about. You talked about Agenda 2025. Yes, when it was put on the table on the 1st of March 2021, was my first day as Director General of ESA. It highlights 5 priorities. Number 1, EU-ESA relationship. Number 2, commercialization and how we should speed up and and force much more commercialization in Europe. Number 3, safety and security, safety in orbit, security on the ground. Number 4, tackling specific program challenges like launchers, like other technical issues we have. And number 5, ESA transformation, the internal transformation of ESA as an agency, which is also now in full swing. And looking back now, a bit more than 3 years to the EU-ESA relation, which you are asking, on the very first day when we started, we immediately started to the negotiation of the EU-ESA FFPA, the Financial Framework Partnership Agreement, which was actually in negotiation for a year and a half, but it really got stuck. So we had a very difficult position between Brussels and ESA to the point that no progress was made. Actually, every meeting we had was a step back instead of a step forward. And it was really a difficult situation. So this was clearly my number 1 priority when I became DG, to reignite and restart this negotiation. I went to Brussels to see Thierry Breton, and we really sat down and we both said, look, we have to put our management attention to getting this agreement negotiated and signed by June. I remind you, I started in March, by June the same year, and including all the approvals you need in the ESA bodies and on the side of the Commission. We have AFC, IPC, Council, not only once, but sometimes twice to go through of such an agreement. And I have to say that my teams have been doing an incredible job, but also the European Commission has been incredibly constructive and result-oriented to make it possible. We had the negotiation done by April, because it took us about 2 months to go through the various boards and approval loops, and we signed in mid-June the agreement. And this is really providing stability between the European Union and ESA for 7 years, for the MFF, for Copernicus, Galileo, and some other activities. The European Union delegated more than 9 billion euros to ESA to implement their programs, or programs on their behalf. And I have to say, this is a huge trust which the Commission has put on ESA through its member states and our excellent workforce. And I'm very proud, very humbled to be able to do that, and I do it with great pleasure. As you know, I've been working myself before I became DG on a big EU ESA program, Copernicus, over more than 20 years. I've been working myself in the European Commission as a staff member for almost 7 years. So I know this cycle well, and for me the EU ESA relationship and the cooperation which we have is the only way to succeed. And if I mentioned before Starship and other things that are happening, yes, they are enormously impactful. I think today we cannot even estimate, or we have not even a comprehension what this means for space altogether, not only for launches, but for space altogether. And yes, if we want to put ourselves onto strong feet and make Europe strong, there's no way other than really to work together hand in hand, European Commission with the EU system, ESA with our member states, and the member states are obviously on both organizations involved. That's the only way for us to succeed, with many partners, of course industry doing all of the work which we contract through the various programs. It really means that that we have to really make our best effort to make it work. And yes, we can do it. We can do it. And this is for me, again, a driving force for the next phase, which means that I have 2 ministerials coming up, CIMIN 25 and CIMIN 28. The next MFF will be starting to be defined now, with the new Commission in particular. They will certainly put an emphasis on it, which will then from 2028 onwards come into force. And we have to make sure that the ESA, CIMIN 25 and 28, where 2 ministerials, together with the next preparation of the next MFF, are really well prepared in a coordinated way in order to make the best use of taxpayers, of European taxpayers' money for the sake of Europe, but through the space investments which we make.
Well, Galileo and Copernicus are tremendous success. Is the cooperation as easy on IRIS²?
Well, IRIS², the roles are slightly different, as you know, and you see a smile on your face when you ask the question. Of course, there we are in the midst now of making the next steps. I think, let me be really positive, and I know your smile is triggering a little bit of maybe some remarks, but it is really admirable that Europe, and under the lead of the European Commission, has managed to put IRIS² together. That means to create a program, create the awareness for the need of secure connectivity, get the legal text together, get the funding, or the first funding organized. Also on ESA side, we have organized funding for IRIS², and to make this, I call it the creation phase. And this creation phase has been quite, okay, not always easy, and that's why you probably smile, but quite successful, that we are today at a stage where everyone would agree that we need something like IRIS². And now, of course, it's up to industry to propose the details of how this looks like, how many satellites in LEO, in MEO, ground segment, and all the activities that need to be organized. I know just this morning there have been important meetings as well of the consortium, and meetings are happening day and night now. Our role is certainly a different one as in Copernicus or Galileo. We are much more an advisor to the Commission, which is clearly leading IRIS Square. But my people, and really have to say that I'm very grateful for the effort they make. They really put everything in under the framework that is being defined in order to support the Commission in advising them. We are more having an advisory role than an implementing or project management role, but in advising them on the implementation. And that, I think now the next phase will be decisive, because we come from a creational phase into an implementation phase. And this is something where I really think we need to, again, stick our heads together to make sure that we make best use of all the excellence we have in Europe. And certainly I offer the excellence of ESA. I think ESA can be utilized maybe a bit more in the next phase, where we really talk about development, implementation, technology developments, and so on. And there, our expertise, I think, is certainly helpful for the benefit of Europe.
Thank you. Well, talking about cooperation and the strange things that happened in Europe. Recently, many European nations have used the money from the recovery plan post-COVID to launch, or well, at least decide the launch of their own national Earth observation constellation, and they gave the mandate to ESA to, well, manage this, which is quite funny, because these are national programs with European money that all do the same thing, but separately. Could you explain us what is going on there?
What is going on? No, nothing strange is going on. Just maybe for the ones who are not so familiar with this type of agreements, ESA is, the ESA convention is written in a way that we develop European space programs. I mentioned Copernicus, Galileo, but we have many others as well. Think of exploration, participation on the space station, the Mars sample return and the Mars missions, ExoMars being the very first one drilling into the Mars surface, moon missions, Argonaut, Moonlight, in telecom, in navigation, and so on. So we develop European programs where member states are putting money into proposals or into programs which we propose, and at ministerial conferences these are signed up to and funded. So this is the, I would say, the standard way, typical way how we work. In addition, we have this possibility, which is called Article 9.2 in our convention, where a member state can come to ESA and ask ESA for support in implementing national activities, where ESA provides expertise, project management expertise, technical expertise, engineering expertise, or whatever the agency or the partner is asking to do. And we have about 12, 15 agreements of this nature where a country has come to us and asked us to implement certain activities, sometimes small, sometimes big. Some of these agreements with some of these countries are with the Czech Republic, with Germany, with Spain, with Greece, with Italy. And the one of Italy, which we signed about 2 years ago, is a large one. Italy has set aside quite a significant amount of money, so not several tens of millions, but really more than $1 billion, to ask ESA to develop for Italy a constellation in Earth observation, and also to support some activities on launch programs. So there, yes, they have asked for our expertise. Of course, I have to say that, first of all, the proposal that is made is an agreement between ESA and the member state, is approved by the member states, so all the member states have unanimously approved this agreement, and all the costs incurred are fully paid by the requesting party. That means, in this case, Italy or other countries who are doing that. So we have the people and all the expenditure that are coming are fully paid for, and we ring fence it to make sure that this is also well accounted for in order to do that. So yes, this Italian program is a big one. The funny thing is, although it is a national program done for one country, Italy, building up an Earth observation constellation called IRIDE, very similar requests came from Spain, from Portugal. Actually, Portugal, Spain then decided slightly differently, from Greece, and now from Poland, to also establish Earth observation constellations, making use of the investments that have been made for Italy or in other frameworks. So in a way, yes, the countries are benefiting from the investments that are made by member states, even to the extent that they utilize some of the, in agreement among themselves, some of the developments we do, especially on the ground segment. They have their own satellites, which we, of course, develop for them and deliver. But on the ground segment, there's a lot of commonality to receive data, calibrate, archive, disseminate this data, of course, for following their own data policies. So when these countries come to us, yes, they come individually, but in a way it has a European dimension because they benefit from technology developments that are happening in these programs. So yes, this is a mechanism we do, and is one of the standard ways of how ESA can cooperate or be at the service of member states.
Yeah, well, in another situation, you explained me, not on the scene, why all these programs can't be mixed together into a single program for Europe. Could you explain it again, please?
Yeah. No, in the case of some of these countries, not all, but in some cases, the funding origin comes from the EU funds, and therefore, as an EU fund, it cannot be put into an ESA program. I mean, it can be done, of course, from Brussels, but not if this is an EU fund as part of the recovery fund, which in this case it is, and therefore it has to be implemented nationally, and the national implementation, in this case of Italy, is delegated to ESA, so we work as contracting, as project management authority for Italy and deliver back to them the satellites so that they adhere to the rules of Brussels at the same time as to the rules of ESA.
And so it's good for the national industry.
It's good for national industry. I have to say that not all the work is carried out in that country, simply because the capacity is not there. A bit more in Italy, because Italy has a strong industry, less in Greece, for example, or less in Poland. So yes, it does happen that through this ESA mechanism, funds that come from a country actually will end up in industries in different countries.
Well, let's go to another topic quite important for us French. Sophie Adenau, our new astronaut, has just been selected for her first flight 2 years from now. Well, I guess in the room there are mostly people from the industry. So what does this represent for Europe beyond the, well, national pride and the fact that it's good to have an astronaut we can speak to in our national language?
No, Sophie Adenau speaks many languages, but being of French origin, I always underline she's an ESA astronaut of French origin. But as those of you who have followed the astronaut selection, we had 22,500 applications. We called for the astronaut selection in 2021 at the beginning. The selection process took almost 2 years. In November 22, during the ESA ministerial conference, I announced 17 of these candidates, of which 5 have been identified as career astronauts, and Sophie is one of the 5 career astronauts. So they all have started, the career astronauts have started their professional astronaut training right after the ministerial conference. They have just graduated at the beginning of March this year. So after a bit more than 1 year of training, where they do really everything from going into this famous pool where they simulate EVAs to all the theories and technologies they need to learn, learning languages, by the way, including Russian. So they really are very, very well trained in this space training. So 5 of these astronauts, the ones selected in the ministerial, have been graduating. So they've got their wings, meaning that they're qualified to be called up for future missions. So now, of course, I have 5 astronauts that are qualified, and we have negotiated with NASA the next flight opportunities. The next one will be in early 26. So I had to select out of the 5, 1 or 2 to be the first ones to be trained, because after the base training, you need another almost 2 years of specific training for the missions, including the experiments that we prepare for the astronauts in space. Meaning that I was selecting 2 of the next ones, so the first of the 2 of the 5 that are flying. And Sophie Adenau will be the first one among the 5 to fly to the space station in the first quarter of 26. Raphaël Liégeois, being an ESA astronaut of Belgian origin, will be the next one. His flight is planned to be in the around the third quarter of 2026. And then the others, we have flight opportunities, and this is really good, and I would say almost unusual, because in the past, quite often it happened that astronauts were selected, but it was not clear when they can fly. I've seen one of our astronaut friends and colleagues in the room, when they can fly, and sometimes it took them 5 years, 10 years, even longer to have a flight opportunity. And today I can say that those 5 astronauts that I have selected as career astronauts will all fly by 2030, because we have already negotiated with NASA 5 flights to the space station. And as I said, the first 2 will be Sophie Adenau and Raphaël Liégeois. So yes, this will be quite exciting. Sophie, as you all know her very well, I'm sure from different interactions, is quite an astronaut. I really look forward to her being fully in her job. And of course, now she's very busy. At the moment, she is in Houston doing the first part of the training. She will then come to Europe, to the European Astronaut, to the European Astronaut Center, continuing the training, and she will do the experiments which we prepare together with her, which she then conducts on the space station. So yes, this will be quite an important launch in early 26.
Thank you. Well, for many years, and I think it will continue, there is this mechanism where we trade elements. It's been cargos, it's been modules against access to the infrastructure in low Earth orbit, and in the coming future in lunar orbit. How do you see this evolving? Because, well, you've launched recently a tiny program to prepare for developing a cargo solution unmanned for Europe to the ISS and what will come after the ISS. Is this possible, or is it still breaking a lot in the delegations regarding having a real European access to space for astronauts?
Yeah, you're mentioning the cargo return vehicle, which is a very important development, which we are enabling through a different scheme. We will be an anchor customer, a customer of this vehicle, letting industry develop it according to its preferences in terms of technology they are proposing, in terms of partners they are choosing. And we have been quite fast in putting this in place. First of all, it's a new way of how we work, and this is really one way how I would like to transform ESA as an agency, together with industry, how we procure and how we interact, because we let industry really run the show. I mean, meaning that they define the proposal which they consider most competitive. We set high-level requirements. We make the procurement, this decision process, the funding, and being the customer. And this is what people call a paradigm shift on how we do that. It's a bit similar to the COTS program, which NASA was implementing, but of course adjusted to European means. I'm really proud to what happened in the last few months. In Sevilla, on the 6th of November, our member states decided that Europe will or ESA should procure this cargo return vehicle in a different way. The next day, on the 7th of November, my teams already started having their meetings to prepare what we call the tender documentation, so the documentation required to ask industry for proposal. We had to approve this tender documentation, or the whole procurement package with our member states through a board called the IPC. We had to make the tender documentation ready for release and ask industry for proposals. This happened just before Christmas. Then industry was preparing proposals, was submitting them according to a deadline. We evaluated them. We clarified some points. We identified the winning companies, and we negotiated with the winning companies some conditions which we had, or some points that need to be clarified. And we prepared the contracts for signature, and I signed them on the 22nd of May, the evening before the Space Council. So within 6 months, we have gone from a political decision to a procurement, a contract signed, and a kickoff. And this is quite fast for a procurement of that magnitude and of that importance. So why is it so important? Because it is a cargo return vehicle. It has something that we don't have today in Europe. It should be capable to transport quite a large cargo, about 4 tons, up to the space station, docking on the space station, and coming back to the surface. That means having re-entry capability, bringing back another 2.5 tons of cargo to the surface and land safely on the surface. This is something we don't have today in terms of technology, so therefore stimulating this technology is extremely important. We gave a very ambitious timeline. Before the end of the ISS, it should be docking to the ISS and then, of course, to future commercial stations. So the time schedule, the time scale is very short. It's actually, some even say, a bit shorter or faster than what happened in the US. But also, this cargo return vehicle, since it brings back 2.5 tons of mass and lands on the surface, could evolve to a future astronaut. That means human vehicle. Of course, for this we need a new decision from member states, which first of all we have to fly the cargo a few times, as also we know it has been done in other places. But this could evolve into a future astronaut vehicle, and this, of course, would be a very important step for our human exploration program, especially on the astronaut side. So yes, quite important from a technology point of view. Also important from a ESA transformation point of view, so how we procure and how we interact with industry. And I really have to say the speed which we have shown here, how fast we can do that, is quite impressive. Really have to be grateful to all the teams involved on all sides, including industry. As you know, we have 2 winning consortia we have selected, Thales Alenia Space and the exploration company. And now we, of course, interact with them to make sure that their developments are on time, on schedule, to go to develop this cargo return vehicle. There's one point which is probably worth mentioning, and I'm surprised I have not heard yet the word in our discussion, which is that for phase 1, that means until we get the second phase funding at the ex-ministerial, we do not apply any geo-return constraints. And I know this is a very important aspect, but this is also quite important because we are testing new ways of procuring and therefore, yes, making quite some progress within the ESA system on being faster, being more flexible, and making sure that we are getting fit for the future, for the next decades, in order to really make sure that we do it in the best possible way in terms of procurement of infrastructure from industry.
Well, you almost ruined my last question, but I have a question which I did not prepare for you, but these CRV, this cargo return vehicle, will they come into the basket for barters with NASA?
It will, yes, absolutely. It will become part of the barter with NASA, but also, not to underestimate, of future commercial space stations. And some of them are already making agreements with some of the commercial stations that are building up in the US at the moment. Also myself, I've signed 3 agreements with some of these future candidates. Just last week I've signed an agreement with VAST, which started recently. I've signed some time ago an agreement with Axiom, and one with Starlab, that means Voyager Space, Airbus, and now they have included Mitsubishi and Heavy Industries and MDA. So these 3 companies, or joint venture in one case, or companies, they are developing future commercial space stations. And yes, this cargo return vehicle in the future should also, after the ISS would not exist anymore, dock on these future stations. And part of this agreement, of this MOU which I signed, is that elements of cargo transport could be used as a future partner, or they could buy this service from Europe. Of course, one sentence says if the conditions, or if they are competitive compared to other options, but this is up to the industry to be competitive.
Well, let's go back to Sevilla. With the upcoming European Launcher Challenge, well, I already asked a question to Tony Torkelsen earlier today. It seems that space transportation is moving out of the traditional geo-return scheme. Is it an impression, or is this something brewing on regarding the future of georeturn?
No, georeturn is hotly debated these days. I read a lot in the newspaper about it, and certainly something that that we need to look very seriously into. But let me just step back for a moment. Sometimes georeturn is not used in the right context, if I may. Georeturn is part of a wider industrial policy, which ESA has in place. There are 4 elements to this industrial policy. The number 1 criteria of our ESA industrial policy is to create a competitive industry. And let me now just underline how competitive we are, and this is really the work of ESA over many decades, way before my time, that we have been really creating this industry that is on the world market considered as somebody who delivers very good value for money in what we do. I have done the exercise of looking into details, and I can mention a few examples. We have METOP-SG or MTG as major programs we do with EUMETSAT in meteorology. They are both costing, this is published, so I'm not disclosing any figures that are not known. They're costing in the order of 5 billion euros, run over 10, 12 years, each of them. We have just started, just launched MTG, the first satellite. METOP-SG is coming very soon. And if you compare those with other programs in other parts of the world, and now I'm not naming them, but you can probably know them, I can tell you that ours are very good value for money and certainly cost less, despite being of similar technology and similar composition of number of satellites, instruments, and so on. So if you make such a comparison, European industry is very competitive, and I think this is really a strength of our industry, and I'm always impressed of how well we can or they can do, despite all the complications we have in Europe. 22 countries in ESA, georeturn, our rules which we have in the various boards of ESA and so on. But despite all that, or maybe because of all that, we have a very competitive industry, because we have an industrial policy in ESA that is very competition oriented. And it's really a very fair, true statement that our programs that we deliver are very good value for money, and they really can compare to international benchmarks. So I think this is extremely important. Now we come to the point you raised on the launches or georeturn. Absolutely, we need to reform all the time our industrial policy rules, the way how we procure. And we have started, I've started last year, at the beginning of last year, actually before the debate on georeturn was actually coming much more to the surface, an exercise with our member states on the current industrial policy rules, and of course georeturn being a focus. This exercise has been running for more than a year. Through the body called IPC, Industrial Policy Committee. They have made recommendations, and actually these recommendations I'm putting on the table next week to Council, to the member states at Council level. That means at head of delegation level of each member state. And then it's up to them to see whether this is good enough in terms of changes that we are proposing. There are quite some interesting suggestions we are making. Pick one just to make an example, the element of fair return, where we can allow a free competition of rocket or spacecraft, and we would afterwards, at the end of the competition, ask member states to pay the share according to the results of the competition, and allow therefore industry to compete freely with partners of their choice, and at the end of it we would settle the bill. So this is certainly one of the elements which is part of this proposal for next week, and there are several others which are being discussed. So yes, this is a top priority, but also I would really like to lead a much wider debate, because georeturn is sometimes not the only thing that we should discuss. I think what we really need to look at is the long-term stable governance between the European Union and ESA, making sure that we are in the best possible way utilizing our respective strengths, and we have strengths on both sides, and we should really make sure that they're best utilized and have a stable long-term governance scheme that goes beyond one MFF, so beyond 7 years, maybe in a long-term relation, partnership or agreement. Another point that is extremely important, of course, is the whole industrial policy, how we procure. You have mentioned it. Anchor customer is one way of doing it, but there are other options as well. So really to be, in other words, more faster, less complicated, that means simpler, but still, of course, accountability and quality are two pillars we always have to respect. We need high quality output because Europe is known for top quality space infrastructure, and accountability because we spend taxpayers' money, so we need to make sure that every euro we spend, of course, are accountable. But within this perimeter, there's a lot of freedom of simplifying our processes, and this is what I would like to do as well, either on the side of ESA internally, and I've started the exercise at the beginning of last year, or with our member states and industry, which is an exercise I just started, made a proposal to the member states at the March Council to have a tripartite task force, a tiger team, to look into these aspects of procurement in particular and processes. They've just started work. The first meeting was this week, but we come with first results or with recommendations from these three groups by October, and then, of course, implementing them on our side, but maybe also on other domains. So yes, there's a lot to be done, and this is really something that is huge. I'm very committed to make sure ESA is the best organization for its people, for its member states, and this is something I'm doing everything day and night with my team to ensure that we deliver and we do exactly that, that we spend our money well, which is coming from taxpayers.
Well, if I remember well, one of your predecessors proposed the a posteriori geo return instead of the a priori geo return. At that time, he did not succeed. Well, I wish you well. Well, we have only a few seconds left. Just improvising a last question. What is going on with our partnership with NASA regarding Mars sample return?
Yeah, there we are, of course, very much in the hands of NASA. NASA is leading the program. They are now redefining the architecture because they had huge cost overruns, in the early phase of the program. So they need to restructure it, redefine it. We have good relations with them, day-to-day relations. We are much involved, but the lead certainly is with NASA. They come with recommendations after summer. I've planned a meeting now with the administrator of NASA, Bill Nelson, in October at the ISE, and this will be an important moment where we get to learn of what this restructuring will bring and what it means and how it eventually will impact us or not. The relation with NASA is a very good one. I really want to underline that. But of course, once they are forced to restructure, re-engineer, reorganize their consortia and the way how they plan to bring the sample back from Mars, we have to work together with them.
Well, so the European return orbiter is still on the table?
But today we don't know yet because the exercise is ongoing. Yes, of course, the answer is yes. But as I say, the architecture studies are working right now. But after summer, we should know more.
Well, thank you very much. Please, some applause for the DG.